My friends, for the first bit of information, we go to Avdiivka, north of Avdiivka, to Krasnogorivka. Russians' favorite, the most favorite place to attack. I don't know why. Why do they think they have more success here? But this is the video. Russians walking in a single line. And if I count all of the troops, let's do this tedious job, because this is 500 meters from the front and I would be criminally charged if I wouldn't count how many men Russians think it's okay to send in a single line, bunched together 500 meters from the front from Krasnogorivka. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
21 so far, but it gets worse.
22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 25, 36, 7, 8, 9, and
40. We have almost 2 platoons worth of men here, which the Russians think it's okay to send 500 meters from the front straight to Krasnogorivka. Well, I guess they forgot that Ukrainians now have cluster munitions for a few months. What happened to these guys? Well, I'll let you decide. They were all knocked out cold. See, Russians have lost about 500 troops, knocked out cold, trying to take Avdiivka right here, and the most success they have had is from Krasnogorivka, this red area right here. They still have not taken Terrakon, the waste mountain of the coal mine, but they have taken about 500 square meters of ground just before Terrakon with the price of 5,000 troops. Great success, all of the Ivans. Now, my friends, I will read you a report from a Russian serviceman, Dmitry Filatov, or as he is known in his telegram, Vozhdak Z. A report comes from Avdiivka and summarizes the Avdiivkan situation for the Russians. It was relatively calm in our area today, 22nd of October. This means that the enemy's artillery, they mean the Ukrainians of course, and tanks did not pound us like crazy. Today, the main battle took place in the north and southwest, in the area of Pisky and Apitne. There, the enemy launched a counterattack, and there the artillery did not stop all day. So, from the Russian sources claiming that Ukrainian artillery don't stop all day is extremely good news and complements much more than Ukraine. It complements the entire Western military conglomerate, because European Union and NATO countries are responsible for now almost every Ukrainian artillery shot. Yes, Ukraine also produces their own artillery rounds, but every country combined is the reason why Ukraine can shoot all day long. As far as I know, the Ukrainians did not achieve significant success, but they created a tense situation for our troops. I love how Russians always minimize the trouble that the Ukrainians create for them. It was a tense situation. We're talking like 40 soldiers walking in a single line, knocked out cold, and they call it a tense situation. We are still holding the strong point. When did Avdiivka, which is a Ukrainian strong point for the last forever, become now a Russian strong point if they are the attacking side? Which side is holding which strong point? I think it's Ukraine who is holding the strong point. It is very difficult for me to describe what is behind these simple words. I will only say that after the rotation, the guys return to the company with empty, icy eyes, inhuman tension. Someday I will write separately about the people with whom I had the honor of fighting shoulder to shoulder. Now, he talks about the soldiers who have been rotated away from Avdiivka, so the Russian troops who went on an offensive actually survived, came back, already a feat in its own, and then were sent back to rotate out. And these guys have now icy eyes. Well, I wonder why. I truly wonder why. Maybe because they're used as biomass, human meat shields. Avdiivsky fortified district is a huge network of underground communications. Now he talks about Ukrainians being underground. We have reports actually that most of the Ukrainian strongholds are dug in deep underground in Avdiivka, and very few activities happen on the ground. If Russians attack, Ukrainians come on the ground. destroy everything they see and go back into safety. This is why Avdiivka is a strong point. Today we circled over one area for half a day, not a single movement on the surface, but we know for sure that the enemy is there. So he's describing the Russian drones up above, they don't see anything, and suddenly when 100 infantry fighting vehicles attack this position, suddenly Ukrainians are everywhere. A separate headache is delivered by Polkas, 16mm mortars. You don't hear the sound of the bomb arriving and you don't have time to react. But we're looking for their units, we find them, we destroy them. Such a report illustrates perfectly the Russian tensions in the area, as they call it. The Ukrainian SBU, or the Military Intelligence Service, has reported yesterday that Russia, according to SBU's accounts, has about 400,000 troops in all of occupied Ukraine. Now, Russia started this occupation in 2022 with about 180,000 troops, and this was their goal, to occupy the whole of Ukraine with closely 200,000 troops. Now, with 400,000 troops and only confined to eastern, northern and southern parts of Ukraine, the Russians don't even have the goal of occupying all of Donetsk. So their troop numbers have doubled and their goals have decreased. What a weird situation. SBU reports that Russia is able to recruit about 20,000 new troops each month. And their losses right now, we'll go through the losses later in this video, but the losses amount to close to that amount. We're talking knocked out cold troops, KIAs. So the same amount is perished as is recruited. Now, Russians themselves report that they are recruiting about 40,000 troops each month. I would trust more of the Ukrainian SBU sources. 20,000 seems about right. Russian blue on blue fire happens quite a lot, and recently in the Russian aviation it has been a very dark time. They have lost a lot of fighters in the past 2 weeks, and actually yesterday they lost an Mi-8 helicopter. It wasn't the Ukrainians who shot it down, it was Russians themselves. And yesterday I reported what usually happens then. The crew who shot it down will get a medal for courage, and the pilots who were knocked out cold will get a medal for courage also. Now today actually the information appeared officially in a Russian Telegram channel, said yes, this was a blue on blue incident and 3 Russian pilots perished. Now what usually happens is these pilots will get a Medal of Honor immediately, posthumously, but the crew who shot the chopper down will get also a Medal of Honor, but in 2 weeks. It will take a bit more time, you know, for respective reasons. Now, my friends, we'll watch a case of a Russian unit who refused to fight. Dmitry has translated the video for us. And the story with this unit is they are from the 12th Guards Regiment and they were transferred to another location because they refused to fight. They were not told where they were taken or what for they were taken there. Then they were locked up in a basement as punishment. This is what the Russian army actually does. They use basements and holes in the ground to put troops who refuse to fight in these holes. I don't know why they use such a tactic, but we have seen many videos about it. Now these troops want to get away from the army. They were volunteers or they were recruited against their will into the army and they want to get away. Now Russia is on paper a democratic country, so they should be able to get away from the army and go back home. But what the Russian military does is just they're not sending them to the front, they're putting them into the pit and they're slowing down all of their applications. So by the time the army actually approves their dismissal from the unit, they can be used in 1, 2 or 3 different meat assaults, and thus they won't survive anyway. Let's watch the video. Dear Commander-in-Chief Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, I love how they, at the beginning of every video, turn to the Tsar like he can help. Turn to the same guy who is the very reason behind them being there. We're servicemen of the 31985 military unit, 12th Tank Regiment, Storm Z, primarily mobilized and volunteers. We come from Moscow region and other regions. We're appealing for you to look into the action of our command. Dear Tsar, dear God, look into the action of our command. They are bad. You don't know what they're doing, but Putin is the one who gave the order, my friend. Upon arriving to the DPR, we were attached to the 200th Motor Rifle Brigade to carry out assault tasks. Our unit took losses in personnel and vehicles. We were sent to missions without reliable intelligence. Well, get in line, pal. No Russian unit has reliable intelligence, so this is not an isolated case here. They think they are special because they were sent without equipment or food or reliable intelligence. Well, in fact, that is the whole of the Russian army, with the blessing of Putin. Without artillery support, without proper comms, despite this, personnel conducted all said objectives while taking losses among personnel. All the reasonable suggestions made by us, the command of the 200th Brigade and the 31985 military unit, ignore them. Deputy Commander of the 4th Tank Division is setting impossible objectives. Well, because he has impossible orders. He has just a political order from Putin. Take the settlement, take Avdiivka, any means necessary. And then he has this 1,000-ton weighing human biomass ball that he's using to do that. Vladimir Vladimirovich, we're asking you to look into this situation. Oh, I never get old of watching these reports of people asking help from Putin. I mean, they never learn. My friends, look at these drone clips. This is Klishchiivka, south of Bakhmut, or at least what's left of it. Not many houses, only foundations and some walls. And these were homes of people. We forget that this is not just some ruin. People lived here 2 years ago with their families, children, grandmothers. Most of the people have fled, some of them to Kiev. When I was in Kiev, actually, in my last trip, I had a taxi driver who I talked to, and he told me he is from this area and he will never go back. I asked him, why are you not going back? When Ukraine wins, you can go back to your home. And he looked at me and smiled and said, what home? And it clicked on me, yeah, there is nothing there. Even if they will rebuild it, people don't want to go back there where these memories are, where they have lost their relatives or pets or close ones. So that's what's left of Klishchiivka, and it will never be a town again, unfortunately. But if you want to know more about what I did in Ukraine and hear about these stories, my personal stories from Kiev, check out the documentary I made in Kiev. Link is in the description below. It is also a fundraiser for the best Ukrainian Special Forces unit, and if you can and if you want to influence the outcome of this war directly, go and donate. Also, if you don't want to watch these videos on YouTube and you want to get them directly and fast, Instagram is the best way. Link is in the description below. Remember this straight line what the Russians were using to walk on Krasnogorivka to Avdiivka? Well, this reflects immediately on the losses. We have 810 Russian personnel knocked out cold, 12 tanks, 16 armored personnel vehicles, 24 artillery systems, 28 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 8 special equipment. Russians are trying to get rid of their manpower as fast as possible. This is what the commanders, in my eyes, are trying to do. I mean, if I was a commander, I only have an infantryman's education, but I would do things so differently. I think I would use pretty much what the Ukrainians are using. Grind down the enemy logistics, save my manpower, and then strike when the moment is right. Minimizing my losses, maximizing the enemy's losses. In this video, my friends, you can see Ukrainians shooting a video 500 meters from Bakhmut city. And if we look at the map, we can actually see that Ukrainians are very close to the urbanized area. They would have had by now many possibilities to strike into the first houses or foundations. I mean, there are no houses anymore, but they don't. It's a choice. Ukrainians don't go into this urbanized area like the Russians did because it's a meat grinder. There is no point. This is what I'm talking about when Ukrainians are saving their manpower. You can take Bakhmut by different means, but you have to be patient. You don't go into the city straight. You push back the sides slowly when the time is right. It is not right now. What the Russians did is just straight go into the city and lose about 30,000 men KIA into this urbanized area, maximizing their own losses and minimizing Ukrainian ones because Ukrainians were defending. I'm glad to see Ukrainian tactics differ. My friends, this photo comes from Belgorod. There is a yellow balcony. Just because some balconies are yellow, some balconies are some other color. Well, a woman living in that apartment had a blue blanket. I guess she wanted to wash it and wanted to dry it off outside. So she put it outside, and what do you know? Suddenly it's a Ukrainian flag. Oh no! Although it's just a blanket on a yellow balcony, neighbors immediately called the FSB and let them know there's a blue blanket on a yellow balcony and it's a Ukrainian flag and we need to do something about it. the FSB actually contacted the woman living in the apartment, and she removed the blue blanket. Because in Russia, everything that is blue and yellow is scary and it's dangerous, and is immediately a Ukrainian spy, because it's paranoia in the Russian society. Fear that you will be locked away because you do something anti-Putin is already there. Now you add the paranoia against Ukraine, and you have this huge society of fear, much like during the Stalin era. If you're afraid of blankets on yellow balconies, you're living in fear. Now, my friends, I will read you a thread by a Twitter user, Chris O. Wiki. His link is in the description below, or just search him on Twitter. The thread is about Russian women in the Russian army. And I think it's very interesting, because during the Soviet times, women were quite a remarkable portion of the Soviet army. Of course, not the majority or even close to it, but it wasn't any kind of a exception to the rule to have a woman as a sniper or communications. Now, the same thing is not true for the Russian army, and I'll read you. Russian women are being recruited for frontline roles for the first time to serve as snipers and drone operators. The initiative marks a notable departure from the normal Russian practice of only using women in support roles, such as cooks and medical staff. Borj, or the Wolf Battalion of the Redut, which is a private military company, almost the biggest one now since Wagner doesn't exist anymore, is advertising on social media for women to join for 6-month contracts. Of course, I know what the 6-month contract is. I will translate it to you. If Russians say 6-month contract, it means your entire life in the army and you will be knocked out cold. At a salary from 220,000 rubles or $2,355 per month. Compensations of 1 to 3 million rubles or $10,000 to $32,000 is payable for injuries, or $50,000 for death. Experience of handling weapons is desirable but not essential, as a month's training in Donetsk is provided. I love the fact that they even report that it's only 1 month. The fact is, whatever the Russian Ministry of Defense or Wagner or private military companies report that they're getting training, you take half away from that. The Russian Ministry of Defense said that the Storm Z units get training of about 3 to 4 months. They got 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So if they report 1 month, which is nothing, they get about 1 week before being sent out. Women participate in the Russian military at far lower rates than in comparable armed forces around the world. Only 4% of the Russian military personnel are female, and less than 1% of the officers are women. In contrast, Ukrainian women have long served at the front. Female Russian soldiers have also suffered greatly from widespread sexual harassment and coercion, which has led over the past 18 months to a revival of the old World War II practice of field wives. I will end this thread right here, but that is what I wanted to get to. There's a reason why Russian women don't join the Russian army, because it's a hellhole without any rules or discipline. To join as a woman is to be sexually harassed and used, and I don't want to say these words right now because I will be demonetized, but you know what I'm talking about. It is a lot different story for Ukrainian women in the Ukrainian army. Actually, when I was in Kiev, I actually saw many units which have female officers. We actually gave 1 car to 1 female officer with a psychology unit. I mean, they have a psychology unit at the front, the Ukrainians. This shows you how advanced their thinking is. NATO forces, of course, have such units, and they are necessary because a soldier's morale and fighting capability is directly connected to how they feel inside their head, and this is what a psychology unit can do. Now, Ukrainians have those, Russians don't. My friends, now the part that you have been waiting for, the naming of the Patreon names, actually the butchering of the Patreon names. I will read you 5 names, tier 10 and above, and I'll butcher them with my Estonian pronunciation. Knut Olav Dekkerhus. I think from Denmark or Sweden or Norway. Thank you. CDM de Artrike Jomulle Ulut. What the hell? Half of this is in Estonian, half of it I think in French, so merci beaucoup. Don K. Shaw, thank you. Robert Schehan, finally something a bit easier. Per Oldenburg Knudsen. These names today are insane. I have not had names this difficult for a long time. Thank you, my friends, and if you like my channel, Patreon link is in the description below. Until my next report, which will be tomorrow. Slava Ukraini, my friends, and bye-bye.